This talk is about the circle around Retefe, which is yet another banker Trojan. My name is Kaastrup, and I work as a researcher in CSIS. And I have with me...
Yeah, I'm Peter Kruse. I'm the head of our e-crime unit.
So just looking shortly at the agenda, we're first going to just take a little picture about what Retefe is, and then go a bit more into details about the artifacts it leaves on a computer, and then Peter going to walk you through the binary analysis. First of all, when we look at Retefe, it's not a standard banker Trojan, but it's very different from other known banker Trojans you see out there. But it is anyway in the category of being a banker Trojan. It's spammed out to its victims very geo-IP based spam attacks. And actually, if you get the email and you try to click on it, you will not get infected unless you're coming from one of the specific IP addresses or countries that it is targeting. In the old days, it had an embedded CPL file. Actually comes in as an RTF attachment. Inside the RTF attachment, there is a CPL file. In today attacks, it's a exe file directly into the RTF attachment. It installs a rogue root certificate on the client's machine, and it again in the first version, it's changed the DNS server to be a rogue DNS server. In the new version, it uses proxies instead. We're going to get a bit back to that. It can do in-session web injects, as we know it from normal banker Trojans. Real-time man in the middle. And it also has a module for mobile malware. Now, Peter tried to draw a little circle here.
Yeah, the title was like the circle around Retefe, and we came up with this. We discovered that one of the command and control servers was actually hosted in Denmark, and then we made this like I don't know, blurry, maybe a bit cool, like circle around Retefe, because all the investigation began because we actually managed to get a hold on the command and control server, and from that point on, we actually managed to get access to their backend systems. We often do that kind of stuff. I mean, getting access to backend systems because that's where all the goodies are. Probably also the way that we're able to attribute so many bad actors. But it's just an illustration. It all began in Denmark with a domain that was being used as command and control server.
Now I'm going to show you a little video, and you will be surprised why we have so many victims out there. Because this is, I mean, everybody would fall into this. I'm sure you would agree when you see the video. This is the email with the attachment.
See, and that's in Japanese. I think it says that you should open this attachment.
And that's not only it. Now take a look.
It's a very, very silent install, isn't it? Like you can even tell it's like it runs power tools to actually drop its components. So it's really noisy, but people doesn't seem to care much about that. They still click it. We've got like 70,000 infections on Retefe right now, so it's a rather big banker Trojan network compared to other the banker Trojan botnets we're looking at.
But I don't know, but since the Black Hole Exploit kit was kind of away from the market, there's been a major shift in the way that banker Trojan is distributed. Now it's only through email attacks. In the old day, it was a lot more drive-by attacks, but today it's mainly email attacks. But an email attack with this one, I've never seen that before. It's really, really kind of old style, and then again, it's very new. It leaves some different artifacts on the infected machine. The first up here is, as you can see, the RTF file, which is typical in an email. So in this case, this is from a real case. The guy called Dick.
No offense.
Yeah, it was webmail, and he double-clicked the file. It unpacked a CPL file to the temporary location that he executed. And one of the only things left on the machine afterwards to detect this infection is the root certificate being installed, and you find that in the registry hives from that user. No other artifacts is actually left on the machine when you look at it on a forensics perspective, which is kind of different from what we've seen other places. I also said a rogue DNS server in the old version back in 2014. I think in the end of 2014, it changed to be a proxy server instead, which is much more efficient. But in this case, it's a rogue DNS server from the machine. The new one is a proxy script. Basically, what it does is it's saying that in case that you try to go to one of these websites, facebook.com, gmx.at, postfinance.ch, return a proxy with a IP address called 5196.200.234, which is active at the moment if you're coming from a switch IP address. Otherwise, just go directly to the website, so nothing happens. Very, very sneaky and very difficult to detect from AVs, for example. Looking at the root certificate that is being installed, you have it right here. It looks like VeriSign. It has an email address to support at VeriSign. There's not much more to it. It's really simple stuff, but makes everything easy now. That also means that in case that the attacker he wants to update the target list, he does not have to push anything to the client as we normally know. He has to like make a new config file, push it out to the client. Here he's simply just changing the server-side script or server-side certificate to add multiple targets. So when you download, to understand that you need to the server that Retefe uses, the command control server, is acting as a rogue DNS, but also as a web server. And the web server has a server-side certificate which matches the client's root certificate installed on the machine. So if you want to update a new target and don't want to have the warnings, you simply just put it into the certificate on your server. Thereby you can control your target list only on the server side. That is very, very, very smart. Looking at some of the targets in the X509 version 3 subject, alternative name, you have all the target here. Basically what we're doing is we just constantly pulling this server-side certificate and looking for new targets in the list, and it's constantly updating, and it's not only banking sites. Now imagine now you have an infected client which has Retefe installed, and what they need to do in order to get the money out of the bank, they need to make a phishing site. So on your left-hand side, you have the phishing site. On the right-hand side, you have the Retefe IT criminals that is acting in real time in the attack phase. So when the user go into his normal net bank, it's a complete phishing site of the bank. And when he put in his username and password, it is not sent to the bank. It is sent to the criminal. Could be using a Jabber, whatever protocol that he can get in real time. Then he logs into the real website for the bank. Enter the username and password. He get back the OTP, which he then transfer back to the client. That then put in the OTP and send it back to the criminal. Thereby he has all the thing he needs to circumvent this specific banking solution. Now the banking two-factor authentication systems are very different around the world. But in this case, this is the only thing he needs to make the malicious transaction. If we're looking at what the client can get back, he's typical getting back a spinning wheel and then transactions are done. If we're looking at some of the plus sides on this, is it's easy to update and maintain the target list. But it also circumvent any server-side detection that is out there. If you're familiar with Trustee and Pinpoint, or Code Sealer or other different systems, they're looking at injects on their own website. But because the infected client never touches the real website, there's nothing to detect. That is very cool. Circumvents traditional AV detections. I haven't tested with Kaspersky, and I wouldn't dare. But since there's no files left on the system after the infection, it's only changing the DNS or adding a proxy pack and installing a root certificate. There's really not much to detect on it, unless you're looking for malicious DNS servers. On the bad side is it's not resilient to takedown. Basically, if you take down the DNS server, you lose all your bots, and that's of course a big problem. In missing standard functionality such as keyboard locking, data harvesting, a SOC, a RAT, but that's also why we've seen it being bundled with traditional bank Trojans such as SUSE and Citadel if they need the extra functionality. And then we go to Peter.
Yep, thanks. Just it's not very complex. One of the stuff that we really hate about this kind of binary code is when they use these crappy VB cryptors on top of it, because it takes time to unwrap it and find out what really goes on. So they do that as well. One of the stuff that we looked at is that it has compile leftovers that it says boo-boo VB, as a Visual Basic project. And we found out that it was actually being sold on several Russian underground websites. And then we probably can buy these like VB cryptors for not much money. So basically what you do, you just pack it in again and do different tricks with the binary, and then you lose AV detection. When executed, it looks for cookies and matches these with a target list. That is the power tool. It uses that for doing exactly that. So you can see the script down here, that what it does. If it could, okay. But anyways, it basically runs, look for cookies several places in the browser certificate and the browser cookie stores. So it doesn't stay on the system, as Jan already mentioned. So it's not really like anything that you would be able to prevalently maintain the bots. So if you take down, as well as Jan said, take down the DNS or you take down the rogue proxy, then they lose connection. So what they do now is that they actually distribute. But this is just to show you the EDA thing that goes out. Basically, what it does, it just looks for the certificate store to drop the root certificate, and when the root certificate is being dropped, then it basically has every ability to remove any like errors that might occur to the user when logging into the website that is being like fraudulent. The latest spam run carried. I think it's just 2 weeks ago. Actually carried Citadel. And it's kind of a strategical change of tactics from the Retefe group. And we think it's because that they, at one point, they had like about 70,000 bots. We could tell that because we got access to the DNS servers. We could tell from the unique request where it came from. So there was like 75,000 in unique bots, basically located around 4 countries. So they lost that connection when we took down the DNS. So obviously they don't want us to do that again. So now they're bundling it with Citadel, which then I don't know why, but which then again downloads Retefe, and you can see that from the distinct query it does to the command and control gateway. And this is just some of the regular stuff. It blocks sites, AV sites, security sites. And just to get to know what kind of targets we're looking at, primarily, again, 4 targets. And these are very targeted attacks, very geographically targeted. So if you don't come from any of these countries, according to which campaign it actually is that they're launching, then you won't be able to get the payload. So it will do nothing, it will just sit there and then quit. So you'll have to have a certain IP address, or they just filter it at their command and control server. So besides financial institutions, it also goes for Google and stuff like that. It steals from popular online services as well. Just to get some infection stats, this is 24 hours monitoring. You can see a huge cluster in Switzerland. This is based on a sinkhole data, basically. So there's a huge cluster in Switzerland at that point. It was the main target, I think. Actually, about 30,000 infections solely in Switzerland. Within the 22 hours, we had proxy monitoring on their command and control proxy gateway. I don't know if that is, but that is basically how the drop data looks when we got a hold on it, and then we just had to pass the IP addresses out, and then we were able to, based on that, see where the infection were located. So to get an idea, Swiss, about 16,000 currently. In Austria, we have about 8,000. We have approximately 5,000 in Germany. We have about 1,800 in Sweden, and then we have a rather big amount of infection that are starting to occur in Japan. So we were doing a blog post recently where we revealed that Retefe now is now moving their operations to Japan, which is interesting as well. So in December 2014, Retefe made use of a command and control server in Denmark. That is a bummer because, well, if you wanna place a command and control server, don't put it in Denmark because we will find it and we will get a hold on it. So that's what we did. We took it. Not a very smart move. So that is a palm face. From the command and control server, we extracted IPs infected and also the PSP code, which were lightly encoded, but it didn't take much than a few minutes to decode it. So we got access to the backend infrastructure, which turned out to be hosted in Ukraine. What a surprise. So we got our friends in Ukrainian CERT, and we actually managed to also get access to their real backend server. And this is kind of interesting because if you look at it, this is they log in all the time in this period from where we were monitoring this particular server. They're always accessing this website or this particular backend system from Romania. So we have a pretty good idea that these guys are 3 individuals and they come from Ukraine, they come from Romania, and they're accessing this backend system that is located in Ukraine. And again, this is just to show you where the IP address on the GeoIP map is literally located. And you can see there, one is in Bucharest, the others are in smaller cities outside of in Romania. Yeah. So I think we made it in time. So if we have any questions. Not yet. This is absolutely, I mean, we were actually, when we were flying up here, doing this on the airplane. And we often do that because we get some new details in there. What I hate about some kind of, the usual topics on the security conferences is that it's like half a year old. And it doesn't really make much sense. So we rather have some fresh data. So this is very fresh. This is just 2 weeks ago we managed to get access to that server. So we're reaching out to Romanian police. So let's talk in tonight when we drink some tequila, I suppose. Then maybe you see. Maybe you got some good contacts that I can move this over to, because obviously we want to do something about the bad guys.